Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Warwick F1 show and to your preview for the Dutch Grand Prix this weekend. The first race after the summer break, but the final race at Zandvoort, at least for the foreseeable future. We won't get to see Max Verstappen race at his home circuit anymore, but we do have a sprint weekend to boot to kind of compensate for that loss that we're having, I guess. 2 races for the price of 1. In this episode, we're mainly going to discuss some news that has broken recently. I'm sure if you follow F1 on social media, you know all about it. But we have had some driver switch-ups that we're going to discuss. But they're not part of silly season, as we kind of predicted they would be. Instead, they're quite a lot more immediate than that. We have had Hadjar unfortunately suffering a wrist injury ahead of this weekend, which means he is unable to race. So we are going to see Liam Lawson promoted to Red Bull for the first time since the beginning of last season, when he only spent 2 races there, and Yuki Tsunoda filling in at his spot at Racing Bulls. Let's discuss that in this episode. I'm your host, Daniel. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Callum and Lucy. Let's discuss. Firstly, let's tackle it from the perspective of, let's work top down. So the biggest move, first of all, which is the transition for Liam Lawson back to Red Bull. Now, this is going to be tricky for him. Obviously, last time he was in this team, he had a very rough run of 2 races. I'm not even sure you can call that a run. It was pretty abysmal. He qualified 20th like 3 times in a row in 2 weekends. But he's had a pretty solid run so far this year. He's had 6 points finishes in the last 7 races, and he's also reached Q3 on 5 occasions this season, which you'd like to think will play to his favour at a circuit where qualifying will be very important, given that it's Zandvoort and you kind of struggle to overtake. Callum, expectations for Liam Lawson. Surely he can, at least do better than when he was parachuted into that team at the beginning of last season, you think?
Certainly, I think because mainly the fact that these regulations are so different is I do think he will have a better chance, and he'll be a lot more confident in that Red Bull car compared to what he was at the beginning of, 2024, I think, was when he was in that Red Bull car, I think. But just mainly because, as I say, 2025. Okay, thank you, Lucy. So, yeah, because of the fact that it's new regulations. I've talked a bit, especially in the earlier races. I'm thinking Australia, when we were seeing the likes of Arvin Lindblad and some other rookie drivers that were really able to take the fight to the more experienced drivers. And I perhaps think that because of how different these regulations are, it's a case that everyone's having to have a learning curve, because these cars are so different to drive compared to previous seasons. And so for that reason, I think Lawson will have a better chance. But it will be interesting. It will kind of be an interesting experiment, really, because up until now we've been praising Hadjar, really, that he's seemingly been able to overcome this Red Bull second seat curse that we've seen so many drivers plagued down with. And we have someone jumping into the car now who probably had the worst start of all of the drivers who have succumbed to this curse, lasting only 3 races before he was replaced by Yuki Tsunoda. And so it'll be interesting to see how he does cope. I think he will cope a little bit better. I haven't got amazing hope for him, really, because I think that Lawson, I don't rate him as one of the best drivers on the grid necessarily. I think he can be quite inconsistent. I think he's had a pretty good season up until now, but I don't expect anything to be blown out of the water, really. Obviously, he'll see it as a huge opportunity, and quite rightly it is, even if he doesn't necessarily want to end up at Red Bull again. He has some very bad memories of that team. He might see it as a way to get noticed by other big teams who might be on the lookout for young talent. As at the end of the day, he's still only 24 years old. He's still very much before the peak, so quote unquote peak of his career, I suppose, if he were to stay in F1 for a very long time. And so he'll definitely see it as a very big opportunity, and the pressure will be on as a result of that. But yeah, I don't think there's going to be anything amazing happening necessarily. I think maybe he'll just get in the lower half of the points, which is ultimately, you could say, where you'd expect the second Red Bull car to be if Verstappen is in the position of fighting for a podium or in those podium places, I would say. So yeah, maybe around 5th or 6th or a bit lower perhaps.
So I think 5th or 6th would be great results for Lawson personally. I think getting into the lower reaches of the top 10 would probably be good, like acceptable. Lucy, Callum mentioned pressure there. Maybe that was a contributing factor to the beginning of last season. What do you think he'll do with that pressure this time? Do you think it'll affect him much? You know, he's at a track where Red Bull have pretty fervent support. Granted, it is for the other side of the garage, but naturally some of that support will extend to Liam Lawson. Maybe that will play to his advantage, or it might put the pressure on more. There are just a lot of variables to consider when you think about how Liam Lawson's going to run this weekend. Taking all those factors together, how do you kind of think it could or should play out for him?
I think kind of like Callum, I think he'll do all right. In terms of the pressure, I think obviously in some ways there's more pressure on him than there would usually be on a driver substituting in for someone for injury, thinking, you know, De Vries subbing in for Albon or Behrman subbing in for Sainz, or even Lawson himself subbing in for Ricciardo at, coincidentally, also the Dutch Grand Prix 3 years ago. Interesting that. So that started quite a good run for him. So maybe he's hoping to carry some of that trajectory. Isaac Hadjar will be hoping that the parallels with Daniel Ricciardo at Racing Bulls end there. But I think in terms of the pressure, there is more pressure on him than there would usually be for another driver in his situation. But I think compared to the beginning of last year, his stint at Red Bull, there is less pressure than then. He is coming into this team. Obviously, he's a more established driver now, but he's had a lot less notice to kind of get used to the car. This is not like the beginning of a season where effectively he's been training to drive that car for the entire off season. I don't know how much notice he would have got. It's possible that Hadjar got injured kind of maybe like a week ago, and they were hoping that, I don't actually know how it worked, and they were maybe hoping that he'd be well enough to do this race, but kind of Lawson was on standby just in case. So he may have had some advance warning, but equally it's entirely possible he didn't have that much. And so for that reason, I think some of the pressure will be off. Also, it's a very different Red Bull team to the team he was in last year. For various reasons. Firstly, literally all the people are different, but also I still personally think it's mainly rumours, but they are persistent ones, and they're ones which the team will be thinking about. This is a Red Bull team, which kind of is in a position where it might have to fundamentally rethink how its second driver thing works, because it's a team that is ultimately having to work around the fact that I still don't think it's probable, but it is more possible than ever that Verstappen is going to leave Red Bull. And so they're going to need to think about what they do once he does, because he will eventually, whether he retires or goes to a different team, even if it's in like 5 years' time, he will eventually leave. And this is a team that will probably be more focused on that than even this time last year. So I think because it's such a different team to how it was last year, fun fact, I said I had some fun facts to spill about this. Liam Lawson is the first ever driver to have been fired from Red Bull and then go back, or to leave Red Bull and then go back. Ricciardo tried it, and I'm sure that there are many drivers who would have quite liked to have done it, but Lawson is the first driver to actually do it. There you go. Fun fact.
I think Red Bull have fired so many drivers that they have no choice to go back to a driver that they fired, because I think otherwise they'd probably be inviting like an F2 driver in or something. I think it's probably got that ridiculous.
I mean, yeah, I think it was kind of always whether it was going to be Tsunoda gets parachuted in or Lawson gets dragged back up again or dragged back down, depending on your opinion on it. But in terms of the pressure, I think provided that Lawson doesn't drive into Max Verstappen, you know, he's going to survive the Dutch Grand Prix, because in some ways, obviously, maybe in his internal thoughts that his terrible performance last time will be playing on him, but in some ways he's done himself a favour with that, because we expect absolutely nothing from him. But it will be interesting to compare to see how he does. Obviously, you can't compare like for like. This was a track which Hadjar was really strong at last year, and teams have had the summer break to do a bit of work on the car, even though there is the summer shutdown. Will be interesting to see how Lawson tallies up versus Hadjar if Red Bull are thinking about the future. But I suspect it will probably be a one-off thing. Probably just this one race, maybe Monza as well. I don't know, although there is then another weekend in between here and Monza, so I suspect probably not. But it will most likely be a one-off thing, and so I'd this is a good opportunity then for Lawson if he's thinking about looking outside Red Bull, just because he probably should, because everyone should diversify their career prospects, to put himself on the map, show that he's a good prospect, that he would be a good asset for any team, and he's not the same driver who kind of hit a brick wall physically and metaphorically at the beginning of last year.
You do say, sorry, just very quickly, Daniel, and then I'm sure you have stuff that you wanted to mention, but interestingly, you say that he should diversify his career prospects, like any good career advisor will tell you. But I think it's strange, really, because there's not any other top teams that I can see him going to at the moment. Like McLaren are fairly sorted, and I think fairly happy with their lineup. They've still got two relatively young drivers, not old drivers, I suppose. Ferrari have got Ollie Behrman lined up, and he seems to be their candidate going into that seat when Hamilton leaves, and quite rightly so. He's doing really amazingly. And you can say the same for Mercedes. They got a really young, strong driver, and also a relatively experienced driver in George Russell, but then someone who you could still see staying at that team for maybe the next 5 years or so. So it's not that we're thinking of Lawson like being destined to go to a big seat, but unfortunately Red Bull looks like one of the more likely options, which is quite bad, because that's still quite unlikely, I would say. But yeah, that will be in the back of his mind. Lots of things will be in the back of his mind. The pressure, his time at Red Bull last time, and his opportunity to showcase. But I think he has got a better chance than what he did last time around.
Yeah, I think when I say diversifying career options, I mean more other midfield teams kind of. I think Audi obviously are also very happy with their driver lineup, so this would very much be a very long-term thing. But teams like that, which are more of kind of a project of kind of going forwards, who might want a driver like Lawson, who by now has a fair bit of experience, but is also young enough that he'll stick around in the sport for a bit. He's not he's not Fernando Alonso. I wonder what Perez thinks about Lawson getting back in that Red Bull before he did.
Given their rivalry, I'm sure he doesn't think much of it at all, to be honest. They're still pretty bitter towards each other, if what we see on track is anything to go by. I agree. I don't think that this is an audition for Liam to get back into Red Bull. I think Red Bull are pretty dead set on having Hadjar in their medium to long-term future as a driver at that Red Bull team. But I think it is an opportunity for Lawson to demonstrate what he can do to other teams that might be more likely to move in an upward direction than Racing Bulls, right? So I think for him it's an opportunity. But for in terms of Red Bull's perspective, I think that's pretty concrete. I think it's more of an audition, even more so, for Yuki Tsunoda, who is dropping in to, Yuki Tsunoda is back. He had a little hiatus for half a season, and now he's back for one cameo at the Dutch Grand Prix. And I think for him, this is much more of an audition than it is for Liam Lawson. It is definitely a chance to say, I can get back on this grid. I'm willing and able and talented enough to be here. But it's going to be really tough for him. I mean, he has not driven actual 2026 machinery yet as of this season, albeit he is the reserve driver for Red Bull. So you'd think he is prepared enough to do so. But of course, driving the real thing is very, let's say, difficult compared to what we've seen in simulators and the like. Correlation is not really something that's been a huge strength this season. And then lump on top of that the fact that it's a sprint weekend and he's going to have to get on top of it very quickly because we only have one practice session before he's getting into the competitive stuff. I just think it seems almost impossible for Tsunoda to get up to speed and therefore to be in a position where he can, I mean, in my opinion, Callum, even get on Lindblad's level. I'm not expecting him to be at that point where he can challenge for the lower reaches of the points, which Racing Bulls have been so frequently this season.
No, I do agree. I think it's going to be a huge challenge for him, probably one of the biggest challenges of his F1 career. And I think to see that, you've just got to think back to the first couple of races like Australia and China, where the reason it was so chaotic was just because of how all the drivers were trying to get to grips with this new car and how to get the most out of it. And that was after 3 practice sessions. And it's really only taken until kind of the midpoint of the season for things to, or at least maybe 4 or 5 races in, for things to start dying down and to see some sort of consistency of where the teams are in terms of pace, because the drivers are actually starting to be able to get the most pace out of their car consistently across an entire race. So I think it's going to be a huge challenge for him. But also I think the reason that I'm certainly more interested to see how Tsunoda performs compared to Liam Lawson is because there's many more obvious seats for Tsunoda to hop into. So Lawson, as I mentioned, there's perhaps not many clear areas that he could go into in terms of a top tier team or perhaps a midfield team that has more of a chance of progressing forward compared to Racing Bulls. Obviously, I think all the top 4 teams are out for him, and Alpine are pretty sorted with their lineup. Audi are pretty sorted with the lineup, etc. But then for Tsunoda, you've got an Aston Martin with an aging Alonso and also Honda being their engine provider. I think Tsunoda used to be a Honda driver. And so you've got to think that they'd be very happy to have a Japanese driver in the team that they are providing the engines for. And secondly, also, you've got a Haas team with an Esteban Ocon who has been very poor. If anyone who listened to our last episode, which was the mid-season review, knows that we rated him as our worst driver throughout this year, and that's because he significantly underperformed compared to his younger and more inexperienced teammate Ollie Behrman. And of course, that is also a team that is in partnership with Toyota, and so again, there'd be more incentive perhaps from those sponsors to bring a Japanese driver in. And so, yeah, I think there's definitely many areas that I could see him going in a year or two's time. So there's going to be lots of eyes on his performance, and he will know this better than anyone. He'll know that the pressure's on and that people are going to be watching his performance, see how he is performing and how he's coping with this new generation of cars. And so it's going to be a huge challenge with a lot of consequences for him. I just hope that he can get it, because I'm not quite convinced, just because of how much it took for the other drivers to get used to these cars. So, but I've been wrong before many times this podcast. We will see.
Yeah, you're right, but I don't think you are this time. I think what you said is very sensible there. It will be a struggle, but if he can pull it off somehow, then he will be in the pound seats to take the seat from one of those struggling drivers that you mentioned. Just from the other perspective, Lucy, Isaac Hadjar, I think it's a real shame that he's missing this race. Obviously, last year he finished on the podium here, and it would have been great to see what he could do this season. Do you think he's got massive FOMO right now? Do you think he's kind of worried a little bit for, I mean, I don't think he has cause to be worried for his seat per se, but just in terms of the momentum that he was building and how well he was doing to a certain extent this season.
Yeah, I think this whole season is kind of like a learning curve for the drivers, as they just every race get more and more used to the car and what it entails and how it best works for them. So kind of any race that you miss for whatever reason is going to hurt that, just because it's kind of extra data you're not getting on how to get the most out of your car. I think he will be getting massive FOMO, purely because no driver ever wants to kind of miss racing for whatever reason, but no driver wants to miss racing when it's for something out of your control, like an injury. It's kind of, being dropped by a team is kind of, I'm sure that Jack Doohan was quite miffed sort of at Imola last year, but I think it would feel far worse to have to miss a race because you're injured than because your team dropped you, because they were always going to do that. There is probably an alternate universe where you didn't hurt yourself. I mean, on the positive side, if Isaac Hadjar is listening to this podcast and wants a more positive perspective on it, I would say that this means, Isaac, that you can basically say forever, maybe, or at least for the next few years, that your last result at the Dutch Grand Prix was podium. So, you know, a podium at every Dutch Grand Prix you've raced at. Absolutely wild.
We're going to see him posting that all over his Instagram now for the next year. So I look forward to that.
Just to quickly touch on the Tsunoda thing, though, just because I think that I agree with you in that I don't think that he's going to sort of get up to speed really easily. I think for him, in terms of what would make him appealing to another team, is this, to sound incredibly cringe, he has to sort of end on a high note. He has to show throughout the weekend that he is progressing, that over the weekend, even if it's incremental, that from sprint quali to normal quali, from the sprint race to the normal race, from practice to the end of Sunday, that he has got to grips more with the car, that he has adaptability, because kind of last year, he will feel, right now he's kind of going into any potential conversations with other teams with kind of a CV that ends on a downturn, and he'll want one that says, yes, that CV ended on a downturn. Red Bull wasn't where I was strongest, but when I came back, short term, quick notice, never having driven this car before, you can see me getting better. And obviously I wasn't performing at my best, but you could see me improving. And so I think kind of, as always, under these circumstances, success probably looks different for him this weekend than it usually would. And I think RB fans, a good weekend for you this weekend will look different to what you've been expecting from the past few weekends, when kind of a good weekend would be double points. It's kind of a good weekend is points from Lindblad and a Q2, or, you know, just kind of good progression over sprint and actual quali. Sorry, back to the actual discussion though. Got a bit tangential.
No, yeah, it's a good point. I mean, many people were outraged last year that Tsunoda wasn't put back in the racing pools, when it was widely accepted that the Red Bull was a pretty hard car to drive for most drivers who are not Max Verstappen. So I think it's good that he gets that shot, albeit in the middle of the season when everyone else is already up to speed and he's not. He does still at least have a chance, which I'm sure he has been preparing for all season long to prove himself. Yes, Hadjar, though, massive FOMO. FOMO, of course, standing for Formula One missing out. That's just.
I do also. You mentioned Hadjar as well. I didn't even think about that and consider that. But yeah, I do hope that it doesn't kind of stunt his season, because he has been having, I think, such a good season this year, and I do like to see him performing well, especially at such a top team. So fingers crossed this doesn't take back from him too much. And he's able to get up to speed pretty quickly when we go racing in whatever the next race is.
Italy, Monza.
Is it? Oh, okay, yeah, Monza. Always.
Yeah, famously Monza, really easy to drive and really easy to. Lots of nice slow speed corners for if you've been injured and you're having to get your eyesight back up to speed.
Easy to manage your energy as well with all those slow speed corners. Yeah.
Yeah.
You do have a lot of rests for your wrist, though, being the Temple of Speed. There are quite.
Yeah, because that's. Is it Monza where it's like where you can, if your wrists are tired, you can like lean them on the steering wheel for like down when you go down the straight, because you don't need to steer.
I mean, I'd assume so.
Yeah,
you can do that.
Do that.
Or Azerbaijan.
To be fair, I got to admit, I don't think that sending it round a giant banked corner with like a sprained wrist or whatever it is would be the move.
No, I don't think that's what the doctors recommended personally, no. I mean, I'm not a doctor myself, but I can imagine, like, yeah.
Well, I think it is weird, actually, that it is the second time in 4 seasons that we've had a Racing Bulls driver injured ahead of the Dutch Grand Prix and has had to miss it. Of course,
to be fair, different circumstances. And first one was actually kind of during the weekend.
Yeah.
But no Oscar Piastri involvement in this one. So a big win for us Oscar Piastri fans, because we really need it.
Can't win on track, see.
That's what success looks like, is my presence did not inherently cause another driver to break their wrist.
That's the weakest silver lining I've ever seen on a cloud in my life.
It would be, it's more of sort of a pewter lining, I'd say, than a silver lining.
Pewter's a great colour, yeah. We'll go with that. Other news that appeared a couple of days ago was that Carlos Sainz has decided to re-sign with Williams on a multi-year deal, whereas Alex Albon's only gone for a 1-year deal. I want to get the take of the unbiased fan on this perspective first. Callum, surprised?
Well, I want to hear what Lucy says in a moment about these contracts, because you seem to think that this is perhaps what was expected, that Sainz was going for a multi-year deal and Albon was going for a 1-year deal. But when I read that, I thought, has Albon lost a bit of faith in Williams a little bit, perhaps? I mean, it's certainly, he's been at the team for a long time. Obviously much longer than Sainz. He's probably one of the drivers on the grid who's been at a team for the most amount of time, I imagine. And have they really repaid him for his time there? You could argue no. Obviously, last season was looking a lot more different. They were really making progress. But up until now, Albon has probably heard from James Vowles more than any of us about how we're really waiting to get to these new regulations to make great leaps and strides to the front of the grid, and of course they've just gone backwards. And we've spoken about this before on the podcast. Obviously, it's a huge shame for Williams that can potentially set their progress back years to them eventually getting. Sorry, Lucy, I wonder if Albon's kind of turning his head a little bit. He's definitely a driver that surely other teams in the midfield would consider picking up. I think he's really good driving. He's been really consistent for Williams and been very good at getting the most out of that car on a large majority of occasions. That's what I was thinking when I saw that news break particularly. But I mean, it's still too early to kind of not consider re-signing. I think it's still a decent team to be in. I still think that we're yet to see them perhaps make some good upgrades to improve over the course of this season and beyond. And we have seen them be able to do that, of course. As I mentioned again, last season was really great for them, podiums as well. So I think it's a bit too early for those drivers to call off kind of moving away from the team as such, and that's why I think it wasn't too much of a surprise that they did re-sign. But you've got to at least think that they are considering somewhere in the back of their mind, is this really the right team to be at this present moment? Presuming, of course, that they've got somewhere else to move to, but they are two very good drivers, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, James Vowles has said on multiple occasions that he thinks he has one of the strongest lineups in Formula One. It's just a case of whether Williams can deliver on that. Lucy, your take, please.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think that Williams are the greatest team. Just no questions asked, just objectively. But no, in all seriousness, when I said I kind of wasn't surprised by Albon only signing a single-year deal, it's because from what I've been reading about Williams contract negotiations and potentially who's re-signing, are they looking at anywhere else? Because Williams, it really seemed, weren't looking at anywhere else. It was only if the drivers at Williams were looking somewhere else. Okay. And it seemed that the contract negotiations were much more that Sainz was looking for a multi-year deal than Albon was. So it could be that, because there's a whole lot of insider information that we don't have, it could be that Albon has some awareness of, obviously this year a lot of drivers' contracts are up. Perhaps a lot of them are signing 1-year deals, or there are some 2-year contracts running out next year. I can't think of them off the top of my head, so I'm sorry. I've not done sufficient research here and I've let the side down. But it is possible that Albon is timing that only wants a 1-year deal so that because he thinks that contracts will get released next year that he has a shot at, or which he'd like to explore the option of. it's also possible, they haven't announced it as this, but it's always a possibility. It is possible that it's like a 1 year plus one deal. So it's a contract for 1 year, but then it's very easy to extend into a second year. That's the contract that Russell's on with Mercedes right now. It's technically a 1 year deal, but everyone kind of knows that it's a 2 year deal. You just didn't want to call it a 2 year deal. So I'm not surprised. I would obviously, if Albon does go to a different team next year, then I'm sure it will be a team that absolutely deserves him. And I hope that, he can get the podiums and the good results that he kind of has earned really over his time at Williams. Well, I was ecstatic about our podiums last year, but I did wish that Albon had got one, because there was a bit of me that felt a bit annoyed that Sainz had barely just got there and was kind of getting podiums. Like, Sainz, you've already won a race. You've already won races. You don't need more podiums. Albon had to go through being a Red Bull second driver. That's way worse. And so, yeah, for me, if there are all these things about the futures that ultimately I don't know. It could just be that Albon just went, I think I'll be in a better position to get a contract next year. So I want a 1 year deal to see me over till then. And it could be that Sainz, kind of the initial plan was for Sainz to also have a 1 year deal, and then he pushed really hard to get a multi-year one. So we're kind of assuming that Sainz is sort of loyal to it, and then Albon's intentionally gone for a 1 year deal. It could be that Williams wanted to offer like 1 year deals to both of them, and then Sainz was like, no, give me a longer deal. But ultimately, what I'm taking this as is that if silly season ever happens, which doesn't seem like it will, if silly season ever happens, I will have a lovely time sitting back and watching the drama with absolutely zero stakes in it. Because I'll be having a lovely time with my secure driver lineup for next year when we're going to win the World Championship.
You should try being a neutral. It's absolutely fantastic.
Oh, it's so good. It's so worth it. It's incredible. No, and in all honesty, we're obviously not going to win the World Championship next year, but baby steps. And Callum, you said that we've gone backwards in our progress. We have not gone backwards. We just turned around and are making progress in the other direction.
Would you like to remove your credibility on this podcast any more than you already have done?
No, it's not. It's not a step backwards. It's a reassessment and a decision that we need to go backwards before we can go forwards. You need to get a running start for these things.
Okay.
Well, it's a decision that you don't want as many points as you did last year.
You can't like win a gold medal in long jump without the run up first.
James Vowles is doing like 4D chess at the moment. He's like, we need to go backwards because then we can get a huge boost next time round.
But the point of a run up is that you gain speed. Williams have tripped and fallen on the run up to the jump.
No, because if Williams start off with no speed, then they can only gain speed. It's like George Russell famously said in that one video, you can't lose positions if you start last.
Wow.
And also, I want it noted that when Albon joined, the team were like languishing in P9, like P8, P9. This is, even though that is where they are now, we are talking about them in a whole different way than we were when Albon got here. This is by no means, even if mathematically it's the same, this is by no means the same Williams team as the Williams of 2022. God, I hated Williams in 2022. That was another bad year. I thought I'd escaped it in 2021 and then dragged right back down to the depths of hell.
I was going to say, was that the toothpaste car? But that was 2019?
That was 2019.
Oh, the Colgate, yes. The Colgate toothpaste.
Oh.
I didn't really have anything that I wanted to say about the Colgate car. I just wanted to reminisce over it. It was great.
Nobody had anything to say about the Colgate car. I would have had a nice year if it didn't exist.
Yes, wouldn't we all? Well, to get us vaguely back on track, I think it's interesting. This is a point I wanted to make for like the past 5 minutes, but there we are. I think it's interesting what you said, Lucy, about the 1+1 deal, because the point of a 1+1 is that the +1 is optional and that there is a case to leave if things are not aligning, or if you get a better offer, or if the performance of the car isn't there and the team isn't where you want to be. So if it is a 1+1, which I'm not saying it is, there's no evidence of that yet, then it could be a way of Albon saying, look, in 2027, I want to see these steps made, or else I am free to leave this team and go to somewhere with better prospects. I think that's certainly a possibility for him.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. We often hear about driver contracts having performance clauses in it, and usually they're to do with the driver, but it would make just as much sense that it could be for the team. And it would explain why he's not going for a multi-year deal, because kind of then you don't have to technically like break contract to go somewhere else. In some ways, I guess a 1+1 deal is really sort of the insurance option of the driver market UCAS applications.
Sorry, what? Why are you talking about UCAS? Sorry?
I was trying to use a metaphor, it completely failed. Just ignore me. It's what's best to do anyway.
Okay. All right, fair enough. Let's go to our predictions now for this weekend. Obviously, it's a sprint weekend, so we're going to have sprint winner first of all, but I have to remind everyone of the scores going into this episode, which are that I am leading the way on 50 points, Callum is just behind on 48, and Lucy is a little bit further behind on 40. But we know that it will change. I think having a maximum of 50 points after, what have we had, 11 races so far is a little bit sad, but we're fine. We're clearly almost evenly matched, so it's working out okay for the championship. Let's go first for Callum. Can we have your sprint winner and top 5 for this race, please?
Yes. So my sprint winner, I have gone. I've gone with. I wasn't too sure. There's, as usual, there's like so many people that you could choose for these things. I think, but I'm going to go with Russell. I'm going to say perhaps the reason is I think he's going to get pole position. I think it's going to be difficult to overtake because obviously it's quite a narrow circuit. I know we have had the most amount of overtakes of any F1 race at this circuit before. I'm aware of this, but I'm hoping that it might be a bit more difficult to overtake around here because it is quite narrow. But I think he's going to get pole, and I'm thinking maybe over the summer he's had time to work on these issues with what's maybe his car, what's maybe his driving style, maybe a bit of both, I don't know. But that's definitely something he would have been focusing on as well. So I'm wondering if maybe he can get back to being the Mr. Saturday that he always used to be. But then for some reason, he's obviously going to do worse in the main qualifying because I haven't actually included him anywhere in my top 5. I'm trying to diversify. So Lando Norris, I've gone P1. Verstappen in P2. I was debating which one of those would be first. They could interchange, but I think Norris might be able to carry over the momentum that he had in Hungary as well. McLaren clearly have a car now that is competitive against the Mercedes and the Ferrari, and I think Verstappen will do well at his home race as he is a 3-time winner here as well. Anthony then rounding out the podium in P3. I think he's always going to be up there. He's just, as I say, not really stopping it at any point. Charles Leclerc P4, I think that Ferrari, he's like a 4th place driver at the moment. That sounds really rude, but I just do think that that's where Ferrari are at the moment, at least now that McLaren have stepped back into the picture a bit more. And then P5 is, I thought that I'd go a bit interesting. I thought that I'd stop being predictable, and I realised this has nothing to do with what I actually believe, but I've gone for P5 Liam Lawson. What I've realised, let me explain this. Okay, what I've realised on this from being on this podcast for the time I've been on with you guys and before, is that it doesn't really matter what you predict. It's just going to be complete. Like, you can't predict it. It's just not possible. There's so many choices, so you may as well just go rogue occasionally. And so this is I've been inspired by Lucy and your Colapinto P5, which is actually a correct prediction. But why not? I may be stupid. If it probably won't come true. I don't think it's going to happen, but I thought I'd be a bit different.
Wow. Yeah, not much to say except wow and good luck to you. But you know what?
If it comes through, though, it will be a work of genius.
Exactly. Even if you get 1 point for that, that will be very impressive.
Yeah.
So, credit to you for going for that.
He actually turns out to get P4, I know.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Imagine. I'm going to run through my predictions because we've gone pretty similar, actually, Callum.
You've also gone Liam Lawson P5, no way.
You know, I've played it a little bit more safe than you on my P5.
Okay.
And I haven't put Colapinto either, but I have gone with a driver who probably is going to be somewhere in the top 5. So like you, I've put a Mercedes driver as my sprint winner, but I've gone for Kimi Antonelli instead, just because he's the championship leader. I'm not going to rule him out, but I don't want to be boring or predictable. So I'm going to say, well, I thought I wasn't going to be boring or samey or predictable, but I've also put Lando Norris for P1, and he did win last race as well. So, not too much of a change, but sensible, I think. And then we have George Russell in P2. Then, like you, Callum, I see Verstappen getting on the podium. He's going to be in P3. He has to be on the podium in his last home race. It would just be a shame if he's not, given that he's won that race how many times? 3, I believe it is now. So I want to see him up there. Then P4 and 5, we've got Ferrari drivers. So like you, Callum, again, I put Leclerc P4. I promise I'm not goal hanging because I'm leading the championship. This is what I prepared beforehand. And in P5, I have put Lewis Hamilton. Just seems a bit more safe than midfield P5, but I think for the rest of the season, I could switch it up. I'm inspired by you both and your midfield P5, so I need to start doing that a little bit more often. Lucy, sprint winner and top 5, please.
Wow, this is the first time I think I've ever inspired anyone. So thank you, Callum. That really means a lot. It would be funny if you end up what we thought happened in Monaco, where we predict Lawson P5 and then he gets a podium and you get no points.
Yes, this will not be good, but we'll see. But we've don't worry, we've got more surprises to come with the predictions. So
that's so good to hear. It's almost like one of them's called the random prediction or something.
Absolutely.
And you have to go something different because Holden both got points now. No, in terms of mine, I said I would like to preface this by the fact that I just thought who were kind of the vaguely top 5-ish drivers, and I wrote them down in the order I thought of them. Sprint winner, I said Piastri. Why not? He had a good race here last year, and apparently it's due to thunderstorm on Saturday morning and rain on Friday, so we could see a little bit of, maybe for once he'll be lucky, and there'll be a bit not total chaos because I don't think it's due to rain during the actual races, but a bit of chaos because of maybe some messed up qualifying and a damp track. Very fun. P1, I said Russell. He's in a Mercedes. I think it would be nice if he made up some points in the championship, and I think after he's had a reset over the summer, maybe he can come back stronger. Antonelli P2, I've mainly put this so that I can still get a point if he comes first, or if he underperforms and comes third, I can also still get a point. P3, Verstappen, just because I think it'd be nice if he had a 100% podium record at his home Grand Prix. I've got no idea how Red Bull are going to be this weekend. I just think it'd be neat. P4, I said Hamilton. I felt bad not putting a Ferrari in there, and I thought of him before I thought of Leclerc, so there he is. And then P5 was originally going to be Isaac Hadjar before he very rudely made me change my predictions. So that is not, in fact, his replacement, Liam Lawson. It is adjacent Liam Lawson, Oscar Piastri. There you go.
So you're saying Oscar wins the sprint but finishes the race in P5. That's quite...
Listen, there's no logic behind this. It's just...
Okay.
I feel like Oscar Piastri could be like given control of like the whole world and it would somehow go wrong for him.
Yes, I mean, this was, of course, the last race that he won last season before it did start going wrong for him in a big way.
Remember when he was leading Verstappen last season by over 100 points?
Yeah, 102.
Yeah. Yeah.
Seems like a very long time ago. But
If
This
Antonelli
age,
win,
well, yes.
if Antonelli wins this weekend, he's gonna want to try really hard to make sure he also wins in Monza in case he starts off another trend.
yeah, exactly. Especially given it's its own race as well. That'll be
I forgot how late it was actually that Piastri started to drop off. Like it was monumental.
I never forgot.
It was late and instantaneous for Oscar Piastri, which is a shame. But it's how the cookie crumbled. You mentioned the weather. We haven't really touched on that, but you can bet if there's any bad weather to be had, it won't be F1. It will be F1 Academy who will be out there in torrential rain.
Oh yeah, their races will undoubtedly get cancelled because they've had like at least one race cancelled at like every time they've been to Zandvoort or something, which is devastating. But
wow, I didn't know that.
Or maybe no, they didn't have one last year, but in like every previous year they've been to Zandvoort, they had one of their races cancelled because it was raining. Then every single time, by the time it got to the actual Grand Prix, it had stopped raining.
Yeah, exactly. It felt like that happens every time. And may well this weekend. Callum, DNF, and surprising random, apparently, prediction.
Surprise. Okay, well, don't get hopes up too much. So my DNF is going to be, I'm sorry to say it, Carlos Sainz. I just feel like that. I don't know why. I just have an expectation that the moment someone signs a multi-year deal, something tremendously bad happens. So I'm going to go with a DNF for Carlos Sainz. And then my wild prediction, and there's some logic here. Okay, so it's that I'm going to predict that a driver climbs 3 places in the Drivers' Championship after this weekend. Okay, and I'm thinking there, like, this is basically a way of me able to predict Hulkenberg points without actually doing it. Because if he's near the bottom of the championship and he can very easily climb 3 points, if he just gets somewhere like 7th or 8th, I think he has to get.
Alternatively,
more like 6th.
Alternatively, which I want to check to clarify, if Tsunoda scores a point and therefore vaults Stroll, Bottas, and Perez in the championship, does that count? Because he's not been on the driver's standings.
Surely it does.
I think it does, but I just know it's. I think it does as well. I just didn't know because it's the sort of random thing where it feels like there would be some little loophole.
Yeah, if you guys are fine with it, I'll go with it. I'll take any chance that I can get.
You're right about Hulkenberg, though. He needs a P8 finish, and he'll skip ahead of Ocon, Albon, and he'll be level with Sainz, but ahead of him because he'll have finished higher. So, I mean, it feels like a Hulkenberg P8 is a lot to count on, but if that's what you're going for, I think...
This is what I'm going to do. Every week, I'm just going to try and find new ways to some way predict Hulkenberg points without actually...
What, you're going to go a driver with only one podium finish scores points this week?
Exactly, yes. Yeah, this is what's going to happen.
And then we tell you off because it's probably likely that Isaac Hadjar is going to score points.
Yeah. Loopholes upon loopholes. That's good. Lucy, DNF and random prediction. That will come to mind.
Okay, my DNF. I wrote in here. I scribbled a lot of my notebook and then I crossed a lot of it out. I've gone Ollie Behrman. I don't know why, because not kind of for any performance reason. Haas, I think, have been struggling this. It seems like their performance has dipped a bit, and so, I think that might continue. I think it'll probably be some sort of mechanical failure, although if the weather's a problem, maybe that could play a role. I think he'll be hanging more around the back of the grid as well than kind of near the sort of upper midfield, and so I think that in general just makes you more liable to get involved in incidents. And then my random, which I'm going to explain, and then I'm going to need you to tell me if it's okay. I've said 2 times Aston Martin Q2 appearances, and I've done this to give myself more wiggle room, which is I would like to say that it counts if in, say, normal race qualifying, both Astons get into Q2, so Stroll and Alonso. But hypothetically, if Alonso got into SQ2 and then also into Q2, it would also count. Basically, like twice this weekend, we'll see an Aston Martin in a Q2 equivalent session.
Sorry, well, Daniel's the host. Sorry.
It's not interesting when you have to think, Callum. I think that's absolutely fine. I mean, I think Hungary was supposed to be a track that suited them anyway, and Alonso only just bumped into Q2, and I'm not sure he could do it again in the Hungary qualifying session.
Yeah, but they've got a brand new engine.
They do now.
Famously,
Whether
Honda
it works or not is another thing.
Famously, Honda's upgrades always work to their engines, and they never ever make their cars worse.
Right.
No, I think that's fine. I think if we start to see Aston Martin obviously become truly part of that midfield, then obviously we'd think differently. But it's only been one race, so it's
calm down, Callum. They've got 1 point this year.
Jeez, that's insane levels of Adrian Newey development right there.
Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Okay, my DNF is, I'll keep this short and sweet, Antonelli. I just want to close a championship fight then we're having.
Oh, yeah. And it would fit the pattern of alternating between having a good race and having some sort of mechanical issue, because we are on a run of that.
You're actually very right.
Yeah.
We are.
Spain, Austria, Britain, Hungary, Zandvoort. It would bode well for his championship hopes as well, because Norris DNF'd here last year.
Yes, and I'm thinking if I were to put him to win, for example, it would not bode very well because of Oscar Piastri's trend that he set last year. So actually, I'm being nice and generous, picking me Antonelli by offering him this DNF. I think you should take it. And my random prediction is Arvid Lindblad. I'm surprised none of us have gone for a random prediction involving the Red Bulls, to be honest. But I've said that Arvid Lindblad will score a top 8 finish with Tsunoda not scoring any points. Sorry to end on a bit of a downer. But
is that actually random?
Do you think it's not random?
Do you need the latter qualification bit? Because I feel like I feel that Tsunoda not scoring any points doesn't add anything.
I was going to say you could just do Lindblad top 8 and you fine.
Yeah.
If you want to also do Tsunoda, then yeah, that's okay.
It's like Lindblad top 8 and also the sun will rise.
No, but come on. I mean, Lindblad's had 3 top 8 finishes so far this year. His last 3 results have been 7, 9, 10. I don't think it's random enough to say just Lindblad top 8. But if
we'll let you add the extra qualification. We'll let you add the extra qualification if you want. I'm just saying that I don't think you need it.
Yeah, I certainly know which one out of those 2 is more likely to occur.
Okay. Right.
Yuki Tsunoda's going to get like P9 and we're going to be saying just like
Okay. Thanks for your input, guys. I'll bear that in mind. Okay, that brings us to the end of our predictions and therefore our preview episode for the Dutch Grand Prix. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening to this episode. Thank you very much to Lucy and Callum for joining me. We'll see you in our review for this episode in a week's time. Catch you then. Bye.